Welcome to the Treasury Elite Leadership Series. I would like to thank all our viewers and members for supporting this noble cause of Treasury Elite, whose main objective is networking, knowledge sharing, and mentoring. Time and again, we bring in world class speakers and business leaders across the world in the field of global financial markets and entrepreneurship and conduct various programs, webinars, and conferences in different formats. Treasury Elite Leadership Series is one such format where we learn from industry thought leaders about their experiences of running their business and broad global opportunities and challenges they encounter and how they see things in the future. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Abhishek Goenka, founder and CEO of IFA Global and Treasury Elite. We bring in one-stop treasury and FX solutions for companies across India over the last 16 years. Today, we have Dr. Amit Verma. Mr. Verma is the founder and managing partner at Quadria Capital, Singapore, with an extensive M&A and strategic and operational leadership and board level experience in healthcare organizations across USA, Asia, and Australia. He's a renowned critical care physician, having practiced in the domain for over 2 decades. He heads PretyNext, which is Asia's largest tele ICU network. So he's pretty much worn multiple hats over many years. Welcome, Amit. How are you doing today?
Thank you. Thank you for having me on board, Sheikh. With that kind of a build-up, I'll try and do justice to at least our conversation today. But it's a pleasure speaking with you, and hopefully we can both learn from each other.
Lovely. Glad to have you today as a part of the Treasury Elite Leadership Series. In the next few minutes, we would love to learn from your experiences and your journey. So, Amit, I asked this question to everyone in my show that, after a certain point of time, and you have had multiple hats in the journey, you've been a active, physician, and then private equity, investment banking. You've been teaching in universities. You've been mentored a lot of people. After a certain point of time, it's not about the money. So what is it that drives you today? Or if I may ask, what is your why?
Thanks. It's always good to get into a conversation which is non-traditional. I think I want to respond to it with 2-3 non-related comments and then try and bring this together. I think most importantly, you're absolutely right. The desire, need, and value tends to change as you keep moving up in life. And finally, it comes down to a stage where it's all about impact and what you do in your life. And in my case, and it unfortunately took a pandemic to prove it, that you cannot, the value of healthcare and the fact that it can affect not just our body, but all facets of life economically. And we've been crying ourselves hoarse for many, many years that we do not see how companies, governments are spending enough money for a fundamental right. So I firmly believe that health, it is a fundamental demand for anybody. Now, we barely spend 2% of our GDP on healthcare. We are 1.4 billion people. And quite cruelly, the frailties of the system were exposed. So now if I take a step back, as a doctor, at the end of the day, I have seen it from both sides of the table. When I was a doctor initially, then an administrator, and now finally an investor, that the game in healthcare is a long-term vision. And all stakeholders need to be rewarded, whether I'm a patient, doctor, or a businessman. So my sense is that as I wake up on a daily basis, I do believe the work that we do changes lives. And if it changes lives, that is something that we should strive to do better. So if I look at it from that perspective, from a daily perspective, every single change that we are making is changing the way we believe people work in society. And that's my real intention. So healthcare is equivalent to impact, changes societies and changes lives. If I believe that that's a mission.
Since private has to play a very important role, how do you think we're going to attract private money into this sector? And what should one do to make an ecosystem so that the private guys are very much interested to invest more and more?
So first up, I want to give you a startling statistic about our country. 70% of our population still continues to pay for healthcare out of pocket.
Right.
Insurance penetration is about 20%. And if I take all forms of insurance, I am being very, very generous, become 30%. The second problem is that 70% of infrastructure in healthcare is in the public sector, while the 30% that exists in private healthcare is taking care of 70% of the population. So there is a massive mismatch. Number three, there is very little of consolidation in healthcare. So whether I look at healthcare services, I look at diagnostics, the consolidated corporate market does not even touch double digits. So there is a host of diffraction. Why is that happening? Because healthcare is local. Nobody likes to travel 500 kilometers to get treated. Especially when you are sick, you don't want to travel. So till we do not attack the tier 2, tier 3 and rural markets, this disparity will continue. Which then brings up the point of why is private capital needed? We will continue to be challenged in this country that even though I keep asking for more and more GDP percentage to be thrown at healthcare, we have other issues too. So I cannot also believe. The second is that just because you take your GDP from 2% to 5%, it doesn't mean it'll get spent. Because to build healthcare infrastructure, it takes time. It's not something that is overnight. And the third is that to us, it opened out an opportunity to do good while doing good ourselves. We believe very strongly that we are impact investors because we follow all ESG, SDS metrics. We track them diligently and we got onto this bandwagon of impact long before it became fashionable to talk about how impact or climate or environment will make a difference. We've been propagating corporate governance in our investee companies, talking about how many lives, how many women we hire. There is a long list that I can share with you when we talk about it. And to us, it was an oxymoron. Healthcare has to be impact. I mean, what else do we do? However, when it comes to investments, people will always still look at returns. I have yet to come across an investor who says, guys, you do a phenomenal job of impact investing. Because of that, I'll accept a lower return. Correct. So we have to follow the pathway of doing the right things philosophically, but still be best of class in returns. Now, why I believe that healthcare can be a good investment case for people is because, as I said right at the beginning, it's a fundamental of life. We can keep building healthcare infrastructure in this country for the next 10 years, it will still not be enough. That is the gap. So to my mind, if you can find people who can put healthcare rupees to work, there is money to be made at the end.
Right. No, I'm sure with the kind of deals that we have lately seen, like Vikram Hospitals or Cloud9 and a few other areas, I'm sure you have the numbers with you, but if people have made returns and if history is to go by, then probably this is going to attract private equity capital also. So we all have had our shares of ups and downs. Would love to know some of your milestones and learnings of your entrepreneurial journey. How did you get into this, and what were the areas which runs in your mind and you often think about it that, okay, this is what had propelled things around. What made this change to get from a practitioner to a investor? And now I think you are looking at creating a large impact, and I think COVID has touched you. So just take me through the journey.
Yeah, I think first up, I'm very fortunate to be where I am. And I think while I may not be a very overtly religious guy, I do believe that there is something about destiny and fate. And all of us who are doing what we are doing, it's not by chance. It requires some amount of dedication, luck, and perseverance. So, as I think about your question, I think there are three sentinel moments that come to mind. The first was that both I and my wife are doctors, and we were practicing in the US and decided to come back to India back in 1999, before it was fashionable to come back. And the logic of that was very simple, that we got sick and tired of listening to rich Indian doctors in the United States telling us what if we had gone back. So we said, well, guess what? 9 years, reasonably well educated, have degrees from the US. Let's go back to India. Let's give it a full shot. So packed up our 6-month-old son who had no choice, and we came back. And the first job, and I think that was the turning point, was with Dr. Devi Shetty in Bangalore. We had never been to Bangalore in our lives. We were very caught up with his emotion and passion of wanting to create something unique in this part of the world. And at a very young stage of career, we were given huge responsibilities. So I was running his critical care units or ICUs. Did that for about 4 years. Thoroughly enjoyed, because here you were a big fish in a smaller pond. So you could set up your own protocols. You could train people the way you wanted. And because we were starting afresh at Narayan Hridyalaya, it was a virgin field. So you could do whatever you want. So there were no dogmas that this is how it's done. And to give credit to Dr. Shetty, he gave a completely open canvas. His thing was that as long as you deliver results, I don't care how you. Did that for 4 years and woke up one day to realize that I have 200 ICU beds under my care. And that was a bit mind-bogglingly insane, but also realized at that time that the business of healthcare was changing very rapidly. So now I'm talking 2003. And it was also clear that as a doctor, if I wanted to make an impact, I need to understand the business side of things, to bring in a 360 approach. So I had known the Fortis brothers, Shivinder in particular, since 2001. They had just set up their hospital in Mohali, which I helped them launch, especially the ICUs, and joined Fortis at that point of time as a medical director. Continued in the ICU practice, but joined as a medical director. And probably that was one of the best decisions that I took at that time, because Fortis was growing and Fortis was expanding. And because of the need of the organization, my role changed every year. So it was the best paid MBA in history. So I went from being a medical director to the procurement head. 1 year I was the growth head. Next year I was the physician engagement, signing contracts of senior doctors, to finally getting into M&A, where we took over Escorts and Wokhart hospitals. And that was the second sentinel moment, because I realized that I enjoy M&A. I like the idea of structuring deals, bringing it together, and in the amalgamation of people. And that went on. Also, at the same time, realized that there is more to healthcare than just hospitals. Fortunately for me at that time, all the non-hospital businesses were housed in Religare, which was the financial services arm, which at that time was SRL Diagnostics, Religare Wellness. We incubated Religare Health Insurance at that point of time, and we had a health IT business. So the next 3 years, I went to run those. And that's how the experience. And at the same time, Fortis was expanding internationally. So got a chance to go out and do M&As in Vietnam, Australia, Hong Kong, Singapore. So I truly credit those years to build up my business strength. And then there came a moment in 2010, 2011, where private equity started. We did our first private equity fund called India Build Out Fund, which at that time was a joint venture between Religare and Milestone. Unfortunately, Ved at Milestone passed away in a freak accident. I was the Religare front, and then we brought that into Quadria. So to cut a long story short, at that time, it became necessary to build an independent platform. And that's how Quadria was born. So if you ask me, the three movements happened. Now, when I think about it, it seems like it was planned. Actually, it all happened because of those reasons. So to me, those are the moments. And as you know, and you're an entrepreneur yourself, the entrepreneurial journey is very, very tough. There are times where you're despondent, the times you're down, the times it feels like it's not worth it. And then you find ways around it. And as long as, in my only learning, and if there's something that I can pass along, is that if you believe in something strongly, you find a way around it. And if you do it with the right ethics and integrity, it will come and reward you. And I think that's where we are, and that's why it is.
Lovely, lovely. Makes me remind of a quote in Steve Jobs' book that just connect the dots, and often it just connects. And yours is a very good example. When I was reading your bio, I was also pleasantly surprised. But maybe, as you said, to create an impact, the business side of things also needs to be taken care of. But it's a very pretty exciting journey for the private equity space. A lot of capital is coming from outside, but then because two or three fund journeys have happened, and there are funds who are 12 to 15 years old now. I mean, fund means the duration of the company. The fund's the third fund or fourth fund. How do you take this as an asset class? Are you seeing some trend across family offices parting 5-10% of their capital, or still it's considered as gamble money for some people who don't understand this space? Are you seeing any trend in India and the rest of Asia where you are active?
So I think the whole industry is maturing very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So let me answer it in 2-3 ways. Number one, the quality of money that's coming into PE and VC right now is getting more and more sophisticated. Whether it is institutional capital, family offices, the level of questioning, the level of incisive decision making, and the quality of the money that's coming is much, much better. These are not one-off retail guys trying to throw some money without understanding what they're doing. Very, very hard now to raise money till your fundamentals are correct. That's number one. Number two, because now the industry has been around for 15-20 years, it's also easier to benchmark results. So you can't get away by saying, best in class. So best in class has to get documented. Okay, correct. So what was the IRR? What was the cash on cash? And let's talk. And now in India, we are also reaching vintages. So you can't just turn around and say, 2008, it was like this. But so somebody's going to ask you, okay, so in your vintage class, tell me what you're doing. So I think that's the second thing that's changed. Third is the willingness of companies to accept PE and VC investments with all the bells and whistles that we put in, whether it's at a board level, governance issues, openness on their P&Ls, that has changed tremendously. So to me, it's a very exciting time because for the first time, we are also seeing how people are responding to private equity and venture capital. When I go meet investee companies now, they are reasonably well educated on what our ask is going to be. And it is very common for people to say, I understand what PE is going to demand of me and it's not for me. So I think that's changed. And lastly, there is very limited, spray and pray approach now. People are demanding sophistication even from the GP. They're not just turning around and say, fine, okay, now companies will interrogate. So have you done this before? Have you invested in this space? Tell me, what do you bring to the table apart from the money? How do we become bigger, larger, and stronger? Specifically, what are the issues that you're going to address for us? And to me, this is all welcome because in many ways, it also plays to our sector specifically. This is what we do for a living. We understand healthcare. This is what we've done. So without taking away any sheen of the generalists, here, everything that we do is in-house. So we solve problems in-house. We have a value creation team. We work very closely with the companies. And in my first pitch to a company, when I go to meet them and say, I'm going to be very upfront. I am going to be a bit more intrusional than what you're used to. That doesn't mean that I'll come and tell you how to run your company. Otherwise, we won't be having a conversation. But at least in our due diligence, as we come up with areas of weaknesses, I don't want to just be the person who says, okay, these are 4 areas that are weak, go fix it. I'm going to turn around and say, Quadria is going to help you fix these 2 issues. And I think that enables us to get deals done. We are very, very, very proud of our proprietary deal making. So while we see all the deals through the bankers in the market, I would say at least 70% of our deals are deals which do not exist in the market have been created. Now, how does that happen? It calls for building relationships over time. It calls about keeping an eye on companies that we think we like, opening those doors, building a rapport with the management companies and the promoters, and then being able to work with each other as we go through. Fortunately, now there is a bit of a track record that you can point to. You can show people. You can ask them to pick up phones and call our investee companies or even companies that we've exited and say, okay, have a chat with them and see what they say about this.
Correct.
That word of mouth is very strong.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Points you have put across, and I'm sure a lot of people who will be considering this as an asset class will get a perspective. Thank you, Amit. Thank you for your time. I thoroughly enjoyed talking to you, and I personally learned a lot during this conversation.
No, appreciate the sentiment. Look forward to